Hey guys, and welcome back to my series where I let a random wheel spinner generate my zoo. Today's animal is the a mer leopard. Alright, let's get into it. So I started off by placing these paths down. I just wanted to have a simple square like I had in my other habitat, and then I ended up building these squares out and then cutting out the middle so that I could have room for maybe some future exhibits. I then built the barriers by just making a simple square under the paths, and then I built the staff path to make room for the habitat gate. I then added my 2 leopards that I bought into the habitat. I had 1 male and 1 female because that was their social group. I then raised the fence so that they couldn't escape and then made it non-climbable. I then wanted to add this glass panel at the front, but I didn't like the way it was uneven, so to fix that I made it 2 panels instead of 1 large one. I basically cut it in half and made it the 2 panels, and I changed it into thick glass because I didn't want the wood framing. I then used this sculpt tool to build these little mounds in the corner. I then smoothed it out, but I had no idea what I wanted to do with this habitat. The problem is, I just don't know where to start sometimes, and the creativity just isn't there. So I was hoping to start it and then it would all come flowing back to me, but it really didn't. So after building the second little mound, I started working on this river / pond for the animals, but then I quickly realized that I didn't like it, so I ended up removing it and I just made it a little pond as a drinking hole because I still wanted some source of water. Then after that, I tried placing down some trees just to see if any ideas would come to me, but after placing down a bunch of trees, I realized I didn't like it. I also placed this little shelter thing down, and I liked this part, so this is the only one I kept, but I deleted all the trees that I had just placed. I came back the next day to work on it, and then I started off by just working on the paths, the terrain, making it to how they like. I like adding that dark soil in to make it look like that's where they walk the most, because that's kind of where I put their food areas and then their water hole and their shelter. I think it makes it more realistic, because in real zoos they tend to have that outline trail of where they walk the most, and that's really just dirt and the rest of it's grass. So I decided that I wanted some rocks because I looked up real life habitats, where the leopards actually live, and I saw that they kind of live in the forest, and they have a lot of rocks and trees around. So I wanted to add some rocks, and I wanted to make it very a heavy rock based type of habitat. So I started off by building this, and I realized I would also make this their little hard shelter, kind of like a cave. I started off by building the basic shape of it, and then I went back in with some more rocks for details. I then realized that they could escape from the top, and I couldn't raise the barrier because it was under the path, so I decided I was going to create my own fence with the construction tab, because I did want to start using this more, so it was kind of a perfect time. I started building this fence and I laid it out as best I could. This took me an hour to do because I really don't know anything about construction and how to make it easier for yourself, so I basically took the hard way out. Then I had this gap left that I couldn't make the fence fit in, so I tried to find some sort of wooden pillar or something to fill it, but I decided I'll just come back to it later. I then started working on these little rocks. I was gonna place them around the habitat, but I did as best I could, and then I realized that I didn't even like it. And so I ended up deleting it, and I just started placing random rocks. I was let me just place this and see what comes out of it. And so then I started placing more rocks around it to make it look better, not as straight 4 stones of the same type. And so I placed different colored rocks. I made some lighter and some dark, but I wanted the bases of it to be dark and then the light ones as a highlighter. And I really liked the way this turned out. It was probably my favorite part of the entire habitat. I was just so pleased with how the idea came to be. So after placing a bunch of rocks to kind of make this look a bit better, I copy pasted it and I duplicated it, and I realized that if I placed it on top, it looked like a little mountain, and I loved it. It was totally unplanned for. I was gonna like copy paste it on the other side, but I realized that just placing it on top of each other looks so nice. And so then I filled in the holes with more rocks, and then I kind of changed the terrain to how I wanted it to be. I wanted to have like a little ledge, so that it wasn't just totally all rocks. So then I fixed that and then made it so that they could also get up there. Now these leopards can jump on and off the rocks there, so their traversal area is pretty big, and that's why I was kind of building these fences. So then I realized I had to duplicate the fences over to the other side, and then I fixed that as well, because if I didn't, they could have jumped out of the habitat. And this actually turned out to be like one of my favorite parts as well, building this fence. It just makes it look so much more realistic, and I loved it. I then moved around some of the rocks. I then also fixed the terrain a little bit more, but then I kind of realized I wanted it to be grass and soil, and then the rock texture I wanted it to be under the rock so it wasn't really seen. I'm really a fan of like greenery, and I don't really use the rock texture too much. I then noticed that they can climb up there, which was good because I wanted them to have some like climbable and jumpable areas. And then I started working on these pebbles. I placed a bunch of the same pebbles I used in the other habitat. I used like the aquatic rocks and the stones that was provided for their habitat. Yeah, I then changed the color of the rocks, and then I just copy pasted it everywhere. This was probably my favorite part, especially when I placed these rocks around the bigger rocks. It just added so much detail, and I was super happy with the way it turned out. I went around the entire habitat and changed the rocks and like the height of the rocks and the position of the rocks, just to make it look a little bit more different, and some that were sticking out so they didn't stick out as much. This took a while, and some of them I just deleted. You don't have to keep every single rock again. You can change it to however you like, but it's best to just experiment and test these things out, because even if you don't like it, you can just delete them or undo it. But always, if you have an idea, just try it out. You never know, you may love it. I then wanted to add some structure, some support to this cave, so it didn't look like it was floating. So I found these pillars and I used them, and then I went in and placed the bedding in. I like adding both types of beddings, it just gives it more color. And then I went around and added some enrichment, and then I found this scratching tree that I could actually put on top of there, which I love because then the animals would actually go up there more. And so I decided to place those up there and kind of work around it in terms of using the foliage. Then I started going in with plants, and I found this dead branch that I wanted to lay across the top, and I then used more of these dead plants to make the habitat look a bit more different, instead of just having a bunch of colorful plants everywhere. I then picked through a few trees and I started placing them around the entire habitat, just to fill in those empty spaces, but I also wanted to use more of tall trees so it didn't obstruct the people's views, but I wanted to make sure that it was covered enough for the animals to enjoy. I decided to place another dead branch on top of this one just because it gave it a little bit more look to the rocks. I then started going in with these bushes and flowers to give it more color and I decided to stop with the trees because I didn't want it to cover up the habitat too much, so that's why I used a lot of more bushes than I did trees. After that, I went in with some bushes and I started placing them inside the rocks to give it more color. This is like one of my favorite things to do because I love the way it turns out. It just makes everything look so much more natural. And then I went in with these little flowers and little greenery around the pebbles to also give it more of a look. And this turned out to be my favorite part of it, especially when I added this moss. It just looked like little plants that I just loved. I then went back and deleted some of the moss to add some of these green mosses that I kind of sunk into the ground to make it look more like grass. I then added some more bushes around the rocks. And then for this other mountain, I didn't like the pebble look as much because I feel like it stuck out too much and it looked too, I don't know, I just didn't like the look of it. And then I found these little grass things that I had from the DLC, the conservation DLC, and I realized that I love these things. I forgot how much I like them, and so I started using them. They come in like 4 different colors, so I just started placing them all around the pebbles because it just made it gave that grassy look that I really wanted. And I just tried it out and I placed it as much as I could anywhere just to make it look better. These type of plants that the leopards liked were honestly like the best plants I've ever worked with because it's a lot of greenery, but then you also have color, but like mostly you have a lot of bushes, and bushes like fill up the place so much more than trees do, and they don't obstruct the view. And so I had this empty space in the back that I just filled with these bamboo bushels just to cover the space, and I did it back here as well just because I didn't know what to do with it. But honestly, adding these bushels made it look so good. Like, it was thick foliage, but I didn't have to place as much, and so I love the way that turned out. I then decided to start working on the fence again. I wanted to have like a barrier and outline on the fence so it didn't just look like there was just gates. So I started using this bamboo. I then did the exact same thing to the other side. After that, I went in and added the education boards and the donation bins around the habitat. Then I got a notification alert saying that the leopards didn't have the right temperature, and I realized that during like prime day it would be too hot for them, so I went around the habitat and added some coolers for them. And that is the habitat finished. I was super happy with these results, especially because I started with no ideas, and I really love the way the rocks fit into this habitat. Hope you guys enjoyed, and feel free to check out my other videos where I give tips and tricks on how to improve your zoos.